Now we'd like to start the panel discussion. So in this session, we'd like to take into account the presentations as well as the QA. We would like to have a discussion amongst the moderators and then the Trilateral Patent Office and industry representatives. And we'd like to again ask Dr. Kwakwa to be the moderator.
Thank you very much. So today we are pleased to have panelists from industry and IP offices in Japan, in Europe, and in the United States of America. Apart from the fact that our panelists are all very well known, their biographies can be found on the website of this symposium. So I will dispense with the introductions and go straight to the discussion. So, if I may, I'll start with JIPA. JIPA, and I will ask you, Glenna mentioned the fact that they have joint projects with other companies. And in this respect, Mr. BEKKU, president of JIPA, I want to know, in your own experience, do you happen to have any good examples of the effective use of intellectual property rights in collaboration with third parties?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwakwa. I'm BEKKU of the JIPA. I am also in charge of this, the IP, the department of the Nissan Motors. So in the 90s, during the latter part of the 90s, hybrid vehicles were launched for the automobile industry. On the other hand, for Nissan Motors, we used the develop the electronic vehicle just depending upon the motor, but that the lithium-ion battery was lacking to the mount on the electric vehicle, so we had to partner with the electric device makers, and we built the joint ventures, and the mutual IPs were collected, so that for electric vehicles, a suitable lithium-ion battery was developed together, so that the electric vehicle was successfully launched by Nissan in 2010. So it took years, but still, it's a durable electric vehicle. Energy density is high, so it's optimal. A battery was successfully developed to be mounted on the electric vehicles. That's the strength of the automobile company, that is battery control and motor control capability. On the other hand, electronic device companies has the electrode, as well as the electrode and electrolytes. Those technology are strong IP area of the electric companies. So together, between those two companies, at the breakthrough, a new value was created.
Thank you very much, Mr. BEKKU. Thank you for sharing this. It clearly sounds like open innovation is critical in the advancement of carbon neutral technologies. So with your permission, I'd like to move on to the JPO now. And we've been told, we know many companies were initially launched as startups. Indeed, we need many of these companies playing an active role to realize solutions to environmental issues and to make an active use of their intellectual property. So, Mr. FUKUDA, if I may, what kind of support is provided to startups in Japan?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwakwa. As you pointed out, that on behalf of JPO, we believe that the startup companies are the driving force for the innovation, and they lack the technologies and the facilities, so that their IP, that is the innovative ideas and their discoveries are the assets. But they might not be aware of the value of their own IP, or they are too busy trying to raise funds, and they cannot really cover the activities for the IP strategy. And for the startup companies that they have the venture capitalists and business leaders, but they might lack the lawyers and then the patent lawyers, the experts of the IP. So that for the IP base is supported, provided by JPO for the startups. It's a portal site. It's called IP base. So it's a connecting site to communicate with the IP specialists, so they can gain the knowledge and information about this IP. So that at the IP base, that the basic information as well as case studies contents are delivered. And for the startups, we organize numerous these seminars on IP, so that we offer the forum where that the IP experts and those companies can be connected and communicating. We do have this IP Accelerator acceleration program for startups. It's called IPAS, and then business leaders and the IP specialists form this the IP mentoring team, and this team is dispatched to these startup companies. The participants of these startup companies say that they have actually done this effective the IP utilization as well as funding and fundraising as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fukuda. I'm glad to hear you mention IPAS. We have a system in WIPO called IPAS, but it's certainly not in respect of startups. So thank you for that. If I may, I would now like to move on to the EPO. And Mr. Yann Meniere, if you are here with us, my question is, what exactly are carbon mitigation technologies? And do we see enough innovation in these technologies?
Well, thank you. And that's an important question indeed. And that's one of the questions that we have tried to address in this joint study with the International Energy Agency that was mentioned by our Vice President Steve Rowan in introduction. So one way to respond is to distinguish between three main categories of low carbon technologies. There are technologies related to the production of low carbon energy, renewables, but also biofuels, for instance. So this is important, of course, but in fact, not so big. It's less than 20% of all low energy patents. And most of the innovation is taking place on the demand side for energy efficiency, fuel switching. That's about 60% of the patents. And now there's a third important category, which we call enabling or cross-cutting technologies like batteries, smart grids, carbon capture, or hydrogen, that have the potential to transform many industries, and that will play an increasingly important role in transforming all sectors deeply towards low carbon energy, as they have been doing, for instance, in the car industry. And to answer your second question, so in the same study, we found, also mentioned by Steve earlier today, that actually in the 5 last years, the innovation in low carbon energy has been increasing, while it was decreasing for the first time since World War II in fossil fuel energy. But the pace is not that high. It's about 3% per year on average. It was about 12% per year on average in the beginning of this century. So we need to go faster. And that reflects the challenge of transforming more deeply a large number of industries after having starting to do that with the car industry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meniere. Now I'll quickly skip over to BusinessEurope. Mr. Jacques Bauvir, good to see you are with us. And my question to you, sir, what are the key factors to bring these technologies to market? And in particular, can intellectual property also play a facilitating role in this respect?
Yes, in its early days, well before reaching the market, any innovation is like a baby, very fragile, and so requesting protection. Patents are the only tool to protect technologies. And because innovation also needs time to be mature enough to reach the market, filing patents is a way to buy some time while keeping others away of your design. And from the previous presentations, so you ask about key factors to bring technologies to the market. From the previous presentations, I see 2 aspects that should have a consequence on a patent strategy. Firstly, an early exposure to the market to learn from reactions of potential users. But please never do that without filing a patent first, claiming the basic features of your technology. And secondly, the holistic approach of the innovation process, working on products, on manufacturing processes, on material used, on all enabling technologies. So down the road, the innovator will invent improvements, will work on many different aspects that can be subject to additional protection. So how can IP play a facilitating role? Well, it's of paramount importance to patent all the various aspects of innovation, new applications, and so on and so on. So in short, remember that having only one or a few patents is rarely sufficient. As other presentations already made it very clear, if you want that IP plays an efficient role to reach the market, you need to take different angles and develop a robust cluster of patents. If you don't do that, you will facilitate the job of the followers. And now a couple of quick additional comments on the different ways to make use of your patent portfolio. Either the patents will help you maintaining what makes your product so unique for the customers. This is often called the exclusivity. Or you can broaden the use of your innovation thanks to licensing. And here again, patents offer a strong basis for licensing out. But the two can be combined, of course, and it is up to the patent proprietors to take the decision. The patent proprietors must remain free to decide on its own business strategy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bauvir. Now I'm trying to catch up the time, so let me immediately move on to USPTO. And here, Dr. Toole, the question is to you. So we've heard a lot about patents already. And again, I'm just reminding us all, economists have studied the patent system for decades. What do you think, what role does intellectual property play in innovation? And what evidence do you have, Dr. Toole, to support this?
Well, thank you, Dr. Kwakwa. I appreciate the opportunity, and I will be brief with my comments. I want to mention three things. One is that I've been inspired by the presentations today, and they focused on one of the most important economic aspects of intellectual property, and that is the ability to trade the property or transfer the property through licensing and or sale and buying it. So secondary markets are critical for intellectual property. And intellectual property actually facilitates the sale and transfer of technology by not only certifying that that technology is passed in the case of patents, is passed the criteria for patentability, but it also allows different buyers and sellers to communicate with each other about the technology in a standardized format. So the role of a patent is multifaceted in licensing. I would also like to mention, the second thing I would like to mention this morning is that the USPTO will be releasing a new report on the contribution of IP-intensive industries to the US economy. This report has been produced by other offices around the world, and our report will be released today, and I'm just happy to tell you that that the IP-intensive industries, those that use intellectual property more than average, contribute $7.8 trillion or 41% to US goods and services production, and they produced 47 or support 47.2 million or 33% of US employment, both of those numbers for 2019, which is the most recent date. And so I think that's a very critical thing to note. And let me just finalize my comments here by highlighting what Mr. Steve Katsaros pointed out. He talked about a working paper that came out of this office, the Office of the Chief Economist, called The Bright Side of Patents. And that shows, unlike the industry study that I'm talking about, that shows more of a causal analysis about how intellectual property helps the sales, employment, and actual venture capital funding received by companies. That is a published article now in the Journal of Finance. It's peer reviewed, and but I do appreciate mentioning that, it's been a very important study for us. Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity to comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toole, and thank you for giving us heads up on the statistics in the report to be released. I assume it's still morning your time, so we get a bit of a heads up before those who are waking up to the report. Thank you. If I can now skip on to AIPLA, and that's a question to Mr. Petti. What role do patents play, Mr. Petti, in the allocation of investments in green technology? We've been talking patents. Now the question is specifically in the allocation of investments in green technology.
Well, thank you. My company, USG Corporation, and our colleague companies in the Knopf Group are the industry leaders in our part of the construction material manufacturing industry worldwide. And reducing carbon-based energy sources has always been important to our business as a cost measure, just good business practice. But today, sustainability and reduction of carbon-based energy usage is one of the top priorities of USG and the Knopf Group overall. Patents play a critical role in those efforts because our patent portfolio, as we've heard from other speakers, is part of ensuring that the investment in these technologies will provide a return to our management that allows them to continue to fund these initiatives. And we've also seen that our investment in our green technology and our patent portfolio has caused our competitors also to be forced, if they're not already doing this, to be forced to invest in green technology in order to keep up with us. So they are looking at our patent portfolio, realizing that they'll have to develop their own innovations in order to maintain equal footing in the markets, not only in North America, but also in every region throughout the world where our technologies have been implemented. And again, and that also, that implementation of our technology stimulating not only benefits to each region where we're producing our materials, but also the competitive environment is key to having a strong patent portfolio.
Thank you so much, Mr. Petti. Thank you. Very useful information. And now to our final speaker, Mr. Brodie. Good to come to you finally, Mr. Brodie. And my quick question to you is, what positive contributions have you seen patents play in the renewable energy industry?
Well, how much time do we have?
2 minutes.
I mean, this is a big topic, and I realize that we are already over time. I'll try to keep it as pithy and as short as possible. But it really is a big topic, and I could spend a lot of time on it. First, let me start by saying, a little bit about my business so you understand my perspective. So I'm with GE Renewable Energy, and it's a business focused on wind, the wind industries, onshore wind, offshore wind, blade technologies and development, also hydro, grid solutions and hybrids. So bringing everything together if you have different generation systems and managing that, and electrical storage as well within that hybrids technology group. And so that's the perspective that I'm coming from. And I'm also coming from a business that is part of a large organization, the General Electric Company Group, which is a publicly traded company. So we are obviously a for-profit organization and accountable to our investors. So we have to make renewable energy technologies work, and also the economic side of this work. The first thing that I would point out is everybody likes to talk about the environment, and oftentimes they look at the practical, broad sweeping sides of it. But from my perspective, and I look at it from the renewable energy, GE Renewable Energy side, it's really a technology company. At the end of the day, we're a technology company in the power industry, where that industry is moving towards renewable energy. And IP is a big part of our positioning. We could not protect and advance our technology without it. And that's why we spend, just renewable energy alone spends millions of dollars a year in procuring IP and also maintaining that IP. And then if we ever have to enforce our IP in our space, you know, those are costs in addition to that. So we take it very seriously. And the reason why we take it very seriously is we have large amounts of investments into the technology themselves. Research and development to bring the best technology to the world is not cheap, as I'm sure everybody can appreciate. So we want to protect those investments that drive this high technology area and that support high-paying jobs, globally. And IP is the asset that allows us to do that. So as it's been mentioned many times, IP gives exclusivity to this cutting edge technology such as advanced materials, additive manufacturing, jointed blade technologies for us. And it gives us a competitive advantage by distinguishing our product offerings to our customer base. And by the way, that's how we look at it, right? We look at what is important to our customers, which are the energy producers and managers, and what do they want to see from the original equipment manufacturers, which is what we are. And they want to see that we have new offerings that we can help them drive energy production in a cost-efficient manner, and that we're bringing to leverage the best technologies available, of course, at a cheap cost to them. And one of the things to do that, the way we do that is to have established IP and technology that brings trust, that brings credibility to the table, and it's really hard to play in the wind industry in particular if you don't have that position. I think also, it really encourages the adoption of our technologies. So in some cases, we want a period of exclusivity. In other cases, we want our technologies to be adopted broadly. So we have what we call a G-cubed gas technology that is to replace that we're hoping is going to replace the FS6 greenhouse gas that is used in switchgears and other electrical systems that creates a lot of that is not very environmentally friendly, I guess is the way I'll say it. And others are working on these same problems. So we're bringing our technologies together in various cross-licensing agreements, and that ensures us the freedom to operate to bring to bear that hopefully will be a widely adopted and ubiquitous solution that's adopted in the industry. Eventually, something has to replace FS6, and we're hoping that one of these technologies will do that. It also encourages what I would say more innovation in the industry and brings efficiency to the table. So as part of our process, and we know our competitors do the same thing, we take third-party IP positions very seriously. That means we design around their IP positions and their innovation, which leads us to have our own innovations, and it leads them to come up with their own innovations to address the same problems, thus offering multiple and different solutions to the industry and customers to choose from. So I really think that's a big value add. Sometimes the engineering groups, don't like to have to take on that extra work, but that's part of the trade-off, and I do think it really adds to the landscape of innovation. It also is a way to have a very crowded field that takes IP seriously to pressure test real innovations. I think many of us know that in certain industries, IP maybe got a little bit out of control, and there were some questionable patent portfolios that have issued over time. The renewable energy industry is very active in this space, and at any given time, particularly in Europe, we'll have a lot of offensive oppositions challenging the patents of our competitors. And likewise, they will challenge our patents and similar proceedings, including IPRs and the like in the United States, or other nullity proceedings to try to improve freedom to operate for them or for us, depending on who's doing the challenging. And sometimes a party will succeed in their petition, and sometimes they will not. But what it really does, it affirms those inventions that really have contribution to the field of technology, and validates those that really shouldn't be there, that's improperly blocking access to the adoption of technology. So I think by taking IP seriously and being very active in the space, it actually leads to much better quality IP out there, and the IP that you either have to design around or negotiate a license for. The other part that IP has a positive impact on is doing consortiums, participating in standards committee, and then also getting government funding for new projects. IP is always a big part of the discussion for any of those activities. And those activities are very important to get funding to advance technologies in an efficient manner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brodie. Very fitting finale to this. Let me again apologize to our panelists. They've all had such engaging presentations and discussions. We would have loved to have more time for follow-up, but unfortunately, we are already way over time. We've seen this afternoon, our time, this morning, your time, examples of innovative companies. Of course, it's evening Japan time. We've seen examples of innovative companies in Japan, the US, and in Europe contributing to solve environmental and social issues and to achieve carbon neutrality. Now, we all know in order to achieve the goal of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, preferably to 1.5 degrees as per the Paris Agreement, it's going to be critical to foster global innovation ecosystems and to support innovators in their use of intellectual property. We at WIPO, for our part, are committed to cooperating with intellectual property users and cooperating with IP offices toward realizing this vision. On behalf of WIPO, let me again thank all our panelists and our presenters, as well as you, the participants, for a stimulating discussion and for your attention. And we again thank the JPO, the EPO, and the USPTO for putting this together. And now I now have the pleasure to hand over back to you, JPO, for Commissioner Mori. Thank you. JPO, over to you.
Thank you very much, participants, for your inputs.